My classmates have forever been terrified of me. It's not on the grounds that I'm a beauty, however this is a direct result of my skin infection. My body parts are many times enlarged and canvassed in wounds. That is the reason many children called me the Blue Hunchback of Notre Dame. The main individual who guarded me was Paul. He wouldn't fret what I looked like. Also, that is the reason he requested that I become his sweetheart. Obviously, I said okay. However, there was one issue. His folks. At the point when they saw my skin all enlarged and blue, they thought I was an oddity and inquired, "What's going on with you?" I said, "I have a skin sickness called persistent idiopathic hives, and at whatever point a person or thing contacts me, I'll have a hypersensitive-like response to it. Be that as it may, just sit back and relax, it's not infectious." His mother answered, "My child won't date an oddity like you. He merits a beautiful young lady that will not humiliate him openly." Her words hit me like an insult. Be that as it may, Paul came to my protection and shouted, "Mother, you are so fat, how about you care about your own concerns first?" When we got into Paul's room, he said I couldn't care less about my folks' assessment. "I love you and that is the only thing that is in any way important." And obviously, I cherished Paul back. Be that as it may, the following time his mother saw me, she inquired, "In the event that you will have children, will they look as tremendous as you?" She put her finger on my brow and pushed me back. A couple of moments later, I was left with a little injury that remained for a few days. Obviously, I was too frightened to even consider returning to Paul's home. All things being equal, we began seeing each other inside a woods close to our school. There we had absolute security and could do anything we desired. We frequently kissed such a lot of that my lips became blue. Also, once he squeezed his hand against my bosom with such a lot of power that it transformed into one major blue injury for the following 14 days. We were cheerful as one could be, until Paul let me know that his folks were sending him away to live with his auntie in an alternate state. My heart broke into 1,000,000 pieces. I'd been so certain we would remain together everlastingly, yet that was only a high school dream. Paul said, "You realize I love you." "I genuinely will. In any case, it's not worth the effort. My folks make my life damnation since I'm dating you. What's more, it's better on the off chance that we simply separate." I answered, "It's alright, and I genuinely want to believe that you will be blissful in your new life." I attempted to not look miserable on the grounds that I didn't want to make it harder for him. However, after he bid farewell, I plunked down under a tree and cried until quite a bit later. I knew if not for my skin sickness, Paul and I would have remained a couple. Yet, life is just a little absurd all the time. What's more, after Paul was gone, different children in school began ridiculing me once more. I was so cheerful when I at last graduated. I needed to start from the very beginning, and that is the reason I moved to New York. There I read up financial matters for a very long time and, surprisingly, dated another person. However, at whatever point my skin had areas of strength for a response, I could see the loathing in front of him. One night we dozed close to one another, and keeping in mind that I was resting, he compassed his name into my skin with his fingernail. It wasn't well before it was enlarged such a lot of that I awakened. I needed to shout when I investigated a mirror and saw what he'd done. He thought it was amusing. In any case, I didn't, so I parted ways with him and attempted to zero in additional on school, however contemplating was rarely simple. Every so often, my body was totally shrouded in hives, injuries and swellings. They were tingling so a lot that there was nothing left but to lie in bed and cry. I scarcely graduated, yet figured out how to find a new line of work at a speculation bank. It paid $40,000 per year, which wasn't a lot, yet scarcely enough for New York. Tragically, my skin sickness got so awful that I was unable to go to work any longer and got terminated. That was the haziest snapshot of my life. My skin was harming like damnation, and I'd lost my employment. I was going to abandon life, so rather than getting another line of work, I moved into a destitute sanctuary. All I did was lie in bed, discouraged and scratching my skin. At last, I pondered, is there anything I want to do before I'd leave? The response was yes. I needed to see Paul one final time. I needed to check whether he was blissful. So I found him and figured out that he was working for a consultancy firm in Washington. Then I took a transport and went to shock him. Obviously, I was anxious about gathering him once more. He'd done well throughout everyday life, except I'd fizzled at everything. I feared his judgment, however I was likewise frantic to see him once more, so I held up before his place of business. At the point when he emerged and saw me, he cried, "Good gracious. Christine. Seeing you is so great. How are you doing? I said, I'm great, I simply needed to find a close buddy. He said sure, and we went to an eatery. There he educated me concerning his work and how he needed to function 80 hours per week. In any case, when he asked me how I was doing, I become flushed and turned away. He expressed, come on, I'm your companion. You can let me know anything. So I let him know how I got terminated and resided in a destitute sanctuary due to my skin condition. I even let him know I was discouraged and seldom got up. He said, I'm truly sorry I'd allow you to inhabit my place, yet I have a sweetheart and she wouldn't generally approve of it. My heart dropped, yet I relaxed and said no issue, I'll simply move back in with my folks. When we expressed farewell to one another, I had tears in my eyes. It was so good to see Paul again. I actually cherished him however much the day we separated. In another daily routine we would have gotten hitched and experienced cheerfully ever after, yet that wasn't my predetermination. I wound up moving once more into my mother's home. Her and father had recently gotten separated, and she was glad to have some organization, yet only a couple of days after the fact I received a message from Paul that said, hello Christine, when I saw you last week every one of my affections for you returned. I can't quit contemplating you. I just said a final farewell to my better half, and I'd adore you to return to Washington. You can move in here right currently. While my head twirled around, it seemed like a gift from God, a little expectation in a sad life. I quickly drove back to Washington, and when I saw Paul, we tenderly fell into one another's arms, kissing enthusiastically for a long time. It seemed like we were teens again, making out in the woodland while we stowed away from his folks. Life was great again. I felt roused and secured one more position, yet my constant idiopathic hives erupted once more, and the torment kept me conscious around evening time, so I scarcely at any point got any rest. When I landed terminated from my position again, I felt so embarrassed, yet Paul said, don't concern, it's not your shortcoming and I'm bringing in sufficient cash to deal with the two of us well. That was our life for the following 2 years. I remained at home doing nothing, while Paul worked extended periods. However, at that point I got pregnant and everything changed. At first Paul was really blissful and shouted, we will be guardians, this is the greatest day ever, yet I didn't know I felt like Paul merits somebody better than me. Despite the fact that he appeared to be content, I believed I was keeping him down, and the following day Paul went kneeling down before me and got out a wedding band. He said, Christine, will you wed me? I began crying and said, I mightn't you at any point merit somebody better than me? I'm a wreck. He answered, I don't mind, I love you, and I need no other young lady. So in the end I concurred and said, okay, I need to wed you. However, at that point came the critical step. We needed to educate his folks regarding our commitment. He hit them up and said, hello, you recall the young lady I was dating in secondary school? His mother answered the oddity with the skin issues. Paul said, definitely, I simply needed to let you know that we're locked in now. His mother hushed up for a couple of moments, however at that point she began crying and shouted, no, you merit better compared to her. Wow, she truly despised me. Yet Paul actually organized a supper for ourselves as well as his folks. Perhaps we could resolve things. His folks actually didn't realize I was pregnant. We needed to let them know over supper, yet before we could say whatever his mother said, I have an unexpected treat for you, Paul. And afterward a truly flawless young lady took a seat at our table. Paul's mother said, this is Georgina. I need to ask her something. Georgina, do you think my child Paul is appealing? Georgina answered yes. Then his mother asked, would you date my child? And she said okay. I couldn't want anything more than to date. Tears were running down my cheeks. Georgina was so lovely I felt shameful contrasted with her. Yet Paul got irritated and asked Georgina to leave. Then he went to his mother and said, you are totally nauseating. As opposed to inviting my life partner into our family, you're harming her. How dare you? She's pregnant. You will be a grandma. That is the point at which his mother went to me and shouted, how have you treated my kid? Your kid will be a beast, very much like you. Yet Paul had sufficient. He said, don't concern, you won't ever meet your grandkid, and this is likewise the last time you will see me. He stomped out, and I followed him. When we returned home, I let Paul know how sorry I was. I said, I'm bringing such a lot of hardship in your life. This is your last opportunity to leave me. On the off chance that you need another young lady, let me know, I will see. Yet Paul answered, I love you, and I will continuously adore you. Then he gave me a delicate kiss. All the rage. Obviously that is what each young lady needs to hear. Yet we before long discovered that adoration isn't generally enough, on the grounds that after I brought forth our girl Olivia the issue began. I should deal with her, yet because of my downturn, I was unable to get up, so when I heard Olivia crying from another room, I didn't go check for her. Paul Didn't understand how horrible of a mother I was until one day he returned home from work and found our child shouting on the ground with marks all around her face. She presumably tumbled down the steps, and this was whenever I'd first seen Paul furious at me. He shouted, "You are a horrendous mother." And obviously he was correct, yet I was so discouraged I didn't answer him. Right now all I do is watch YouTube and trust that my skin condition will get better sometime or another. The aggravation is excruciating and destroying my life.